The next economic principle I want to discuss with you is about spontaneous order. Now, spontaneous order means you have lots and lots of people that are acting independent of each other, somewhat independent of each other, and they're doing things spontaneously, and somehow out of that spontaneous action comes order and efficiency. And so spontaneous order can be very efficient. Let me give you an example. Let's suppose we're all watching the Super Bowl, but we're actually in the stadium this time. It is a great Super Bowl. We're sitting there with 100,000 plus people, and it's a great game. Our team is behind by 4 points, and there's only 30 seconds left in the game. So the quarterback marches down the field, and finally there's only 3 seconds left in the game. We're on the 30-yard line. So the quarterback drops back, he looks, throws the ball into the end zone. It's tipped once and caught by one of our players for a touchdown, and time has expired, and we win the game. And so we've got to get out of that stadium. So how do we do that? Well, you said, well, you just leave. No. There's actually a whole bunch of things that have to happen. First, you have to stand up. Second, you're in the middle of a stadium, so you've got to get out somehow, and everybody else is trying to get out. So you look around and you see where are the exits, and you notice that the people in front of you on either side have done the same thing, and they have chosen an exit that is the closest and most easy to reach, and they've started moving. And so you follow the crowd in front of you, and you start moving behind them. You keep a little bit of distance. You don't want to bump into people, make them angry. And so everybody very quickly, though, fills in the gaps, and the people move to the exit and head out. Once you're out of the stadium, you get into your car, and you do the same thing to get out of the stadium parking lot. And then finally you can get home. Now to you and I, this is just normal life. This happens all the time. Driving, getting groceries, whatever. But if you were an alien hovering over the Super Bowl in your invisible spaceship, looking down on the Super Bowl and seeing all these little ant-like creatures that suddenly started pouring out of the Super Bowl and moving into these vehicles and heading out in every direction, you would say, wow, that's an amazing society of little creatures. Look at how well organized they are. Look how efficiently they move about. It's quite amazing. They must have quite the organization. What they don't realize is that there are social norms and some basic rules of public behavior that people generally follow, and that is why it works. But now let's suppose that something happens. A little old lady stumbled, and unfortunately, because of the moving crowds, she was trampled on and she died. So the next year's Super Bowl, the mayor of that town announces, this isn't going to happen in the Super Bowl in our city. No. We're changing the rules. In our city, after the Super Bowl's over, you're going to be led out of the stadium by an usher. Every row will leave one at a time in an orderly fashion. The usher will allow you to leave your row, require you to have a safe distance of 6 feet, and you will then exit the stadium in an appropriate way, one row at a time. Well, instead of having the entire stadium emptied in 30 minutes, it will take about a day and a half to empty the stadium. And we would not tolerate that, would we? That's because that kind of order is not efficient. Spontaneous order, allowing the minds of 100,000 people to each individually work on the problem and find the most efficient way for them to be able to achieve their goal, is much more efficient than having a commanding heights structure and tells everybody exactly what to do. And this, in fact, is a way of explaining one of the problems with socialism. You see, socialism is about having commanding heights, that the smart people at the top are wiser than the little people at the bottom. The smart people know how things should be done properly, and they're going to tell everybody what to do and how to do it, and that will be more efficient. Well, the little old lady might not be trampled on, but we'll all starve to death while we're trying to get out of the stadium. Now you might say, Dr. Thomas, you're kind of harsh on government, aren't you? And I would say, yes, but I also recognize there's a need for government. We have to have government because we have to have certain elements of order in society. We have to have those institutions that can make things more efficient and provide the right incentives. Now, I'm going to give you my definition of government. And you might say, well, that's also kind of harsh, Dr. Thomas, but it's not meant to be harsh. It's meant to be accurate. And so my definition, which will be on the exams, is government is the legitimized monopoly on coercion. Now, every word in that sentence is important, and therefore, do not add words, do not take words away from it. If you answer this on my test, I want it exactly the way I just gave it to you. I want you to learn this definition so you can use it and understand government. So let's look at each word. The legitimized. Legitimized meaning recognized. This is the recognized and accepted, legitimized. Monopoly, the one and only. We know a monopoly does not allow anybody else to compete with them. The government doesn't want anybody competing with it, does it? The legitimized monopoly on coercion. What is coercion? Well, you might say, well, I think that just means to make people do stuff. And that would be right, but in a very forceful way. Coercion is to force people to do what you want them to do. And in fact, we do that in government, does that by using police with guns, right? And they have prisons and all kinds of things to coerce. So the legitimized monopoly on coercion. Now, why is this important? Because we need the rule of law. Again, let's think about this for a moment. We'd say, well, I want to be free. I want to be able to do whatever I want. That would be great. Wouldn't you like to be free and do whatever you want? Yes. Well, if we were all free like that, the first thing I would do is come to your house, kill you, and take all your stuff. And you'd say, well, you can't do that. That's murder. Why is it murder? Because our society, through our government, has defined that kind of an act as a murder, and it's wrong, and it will be punished. And we're glad because that helps secure our freedom so that other people don't kill us. And so government has a role in providing rule of law. Rule of law is an essential part of the government function. We also have property rights. Those property rights are given to us and enforced by the government. Without those property rights, we wouldn't be able to keep the things we have. Other people could steal our things. We wouldn't like that either. Now let's talk about government and the origins of government for a moment. Famous economist Macroeconomics said he thought government was a form of stationary bandit. Now you might say, that's also pretty harsh, Dr. Thomas, calling government a bandit. Well, his view is that that's how governments originally formed. Think about the Pixar movie, A Bug's Life. Now, in A Bug's Life, the ants were being subjected to pretty bad treatment by the grasshoppers. The grasshoppers were stationary bandits. They lived nearby. They would come by periodically and gather a tax. They would tax the ants a certain portion of their food, but not all of the food. They'd let them keep most of it because they needed it to be able to eat and survive. But they would take a big chunk. And in exchange for that, they were protecting them from bad things. In this case, one of the grasshoppers was a crazy grasshopper and would potentially eat them or something really bad. And the other grasshoppers that will protect you from him. So that's part of what we provide as a service, protection. So the stationary bandit is the bandit that lives nearby and provides us protection. Protection from what? From the roving bandits. The roving bandits are really bad. You see, a roving bandit comes through and they rape, murder, and pillage, and then they move on after they've burned everything to the ground and killed everybody. Well, we don't like that. So we're willing to have a stationary bandit to protect us from the roving bandits. And this is the Macroeconomics view of government. That's fairly harsh, but there is some truth in that perspective.